So we've been working on an idea of dynamic conversions through URLs. And I'll show you, how we came to this idea, and also tell you, what determined me to go into this direction. So, if we compare cooking and single source publishing, right? So we have basically some ready-to-use ingredients, right? Because if you go to cook something, you do not expect to, start. All your ingredients should be ready, right? You don't expect to take 2 days to prepare some ingredient, right? So you have these ready-to-use ingredients, and then you cook different type of cookies or whatever. And the idea is that, we have for XML, if it's already cooked, if you already have a PDF, it's difficult to get the basic ingredients back and cook something else, right? So if you keep if you store ingredients, right, like XML documents, let's say, then we can cook different things whenever we need. For data, for instance, we may have, XML or data or DocBook, different type of XML documents, and with the publishing workflow, we can publish PDF, HTML5, different kinds of web help or EPUBs and so on, right? So different output formats from these basic ingredients. So we have this analogy in the end. For data, we have like topics, maps, images, maybe videos, and so on. And for cooking, we have, flour, eggs, cocoa, and so on, sugar, like ready-to-use ingredients. The problem is what happens if you have, wheat instead of flour, right? Because that's not a ready-to-use ingredient for your cooking session. And the same is, if you have an Excel file rather than having a data topic, for instance, containing the information, right? That's not ready to use. It's not something ready to use in the publishing workflow. So the solutions are, you can do that. You need to get from wheat to flour, right? So you can do that manually. Like if we go back to our XML part, let's say copy paste from Excel to an XML document. So you create a table by hand, taking the data from the Excel file. You can do that in an industrial way. So you have like a separate conversion project that takes all your Excel files or whatever and gets your data or DocBook or whatever format. But you can have also like an on-demand machine, right? Something that you need, 200 grams, you get 200 grams of flour. And that's what I'm interested in, this dynamic conversion to obtain what I need exactly at the time when I need that part. So that's the idea of what we're trying to solve. If you have as the actual source of the information is in a different format than an XML format that you handle in your processing workflow, how you can use that? How is it possible to use that in your existing processing, XML-based processing workflows? So we want to focus on this on-demand conversion, let's say, right? So that's why we say it's a dynamic conversion. And now, this started for me when I had a discussion with someone that wanted to use data to document API for API documentation, right? So instead of having Java doc comments, for instance, in a source file, they were thinking, how can we use data for that? And basically, that's impossible, right? You don't expect IDEs like Exist or IDEA to overnight support the data within Java source code, right? So it will not really work. So sometimes you need to accept that content may be structured, but in a different format, and you need to think of ways to deal with that. So there is structured content as XML and data, but then you can have also HTML files, Markdown files, Excel or other type of spreadsheets, comma-separated values, Java source files, like in this case, right, with the API documentation. The Java file is a very structured format. So if we can process that as we process XML. It's not a big problem to process a Java file, right? It's a very clearly defined format. And this cannot move to XML or data or darkbook overnight, and sometimes, as I said, you cannot move them at all to XML. So the idea was to use URLs to encode the conversion. In a way, you can think, that you have from the start, let's take a Java class. You can think, okay, I have actually a data topic, but when I save that on disk, I store that as a Java file. Then when I load that from disk, I get back my data topic. So if you think this way, right, the Java format is just a serialization for your data topic, and your URL that points to that file gets you, of course, your data topic back, right? And I have an example here that will be a lot easier to understand. So you have like an Excel file, you have a URL that points to that Excel file. To make this, like absolute but independent on the actual position, we can use, let's say, an XML catalog that will map something, an identifier like URL files to the actual path of the file, right? So for instance, these resources can be relative to the catalog file, and then we can say URL files is the folder, right? So goes to the folder. Which may be relative to that catalog file. Are you all familiar with XML catalogs? Okay, so an XML catalog is provides a mapping from something, a string, expands that to something else, right? So in this case, when you have this URL file samples XSL, if you ask the XML catalog, which resource is this? The catalog can say anything that starts with URL files expands to the red part there, file path to folder, right? So then when you run this through the catalog mapping, you get the actual URL, file path to folder, Excel file. It's okay? So now, if we want to see this as a data topic, imagine that we have a web service, right? So we can have like example convert Excel to data, and then we pass as a parameter file equals samples.xsl, right? And that's very easy to understand, right? But the conversion is server side in this case. And that server needs to have access to my local disk, basically, in this case, let's say, to be able to get that information. So instead of that, the idea that we implemented was to use to process the conversion client side, and so this is equivalent to Excel to data, and then we write the same URL that points to the Excel file. So from the user perspective, it's you just write Excel to data column / in front of the Excel, the URL that points to the Excel file, and then you get a data topic, which basically runs this conversion, let's say, process, but on client side. Because this being a custom URL has some processing. Any URL does some processing. Even the file URL, zip URLs, HTTP URLs, HTTPS, they decode, encode, decode information, right? So any URL will do some processing on the file. This Excel to data protocol will do the conversion from Excel to data. Right? But it's client side. In this case, it will be server side. So the idea was basically to be able to use, for instance, in a data map, to say topic ref, href, and then instead of writing a data topic, we can say Excel to data and provide the URL to an Excel file. and this will be a data topic. Which is interesting. so basically, if we go to this map, if we delete this XL2 data, I don't know if you see this, right? So and we open this, it's an Excel file, right? So it's this file with part, wheel, description, and so on. If we go back to Oxygen and say XL2 data, we put back this XL2 data, and we open this. It's basically a data topic. Let me switch to the text mode. It will be a data topic with a table containing exactly the same information and as we have in the Excel file. Let me see if I can make this bigger. And the idea is here you have, here you have a sum. So this will sum all the values from this column. So this 16, basically it's the same value. And now if we change something here, let's say we put 10 here. Now the sum will be 25. If we go back to Oxygen, you can see it's 25. Because there is no intermediary data file. The Excel document is the data file. It's only that we access this through this URL that converts the content to data on the fly. Okay, and this is not limited to data or dogbook or anything. It's from one format to another. So just to understand from the end user perspectives, the things are quite easy, quite simple. You have a URL that points to an Excel file, for instance, or to a Markdown file, and so on. In this case, if you have a URL that points to the Excel file, you write XL2 data in front of that column slash, and then you get a topic with a table, with a data table containing the same information that you have in the Excel file. Right? So it's very easy from the user perspective. So we have some examples. We can convert to dogbook, to TI, XHTML, to SVG. That's a very interesting use case when you have information in an Excel file and you present that as a graphic, basically, right? So because you can dynamically generate an SVG file rather than a table in a data file. Another use for this was that because these are URLs and can be used also from within XSLT, for instance, you can use the document function in XSLT, and then you can access the Excel file as an XML document. So you can apply templates on that document and do different processing on that Excel file with XSLT, for instance. Right. So an example was the company that organizes the data conferences. They define kind of like the structure of a data project in an Excel file, and you can run an XSLT script on that to generate the topics and maps and all that information. So this will allow cross-format data publishing, let's say, because you can include Markdown files or Excel files and different other formats and obtain PDF or whatever, reusing the data processing, data OT, for instance, or DTAC or whatever processing workflow you are using. Of course, now depending on the language that you are using, you are not required to include in a publishing format the entire document, right? Like the entire table. If the conversion process generates you IDs, for instance, on each row or things like that, then you can conref or X-include, if you are using dogbook, only a part of the converted document, right? So it's not like you will include in a publication the entire spreadsheet or Of course, you can control also with the conversion steps what actually is obtained in data or dogbook, but you also have this flexibility. Let's say even if you convert everything, you may be able to refer only parts of that. In data, you can use a content reference. With XInclude, you can XInclude a specific element from the document, and so on. We implemented this in a project on GitHub, which is called Data Glass, because we focused on converting to data in many of these examples. But again, this is not necessarily linked specifically to data, only that the examples that we use are data specific. And now, instead of implementing, Excel to data, Markdown to data, and so on, 100 different conversions, we decided to implement only a single URL type, which starts with convert, right? So you have convert, and then you have between slashes, you have different parts that specify a conversion step, right? So this will specify a conversion step, this a conversion step, and here is the target URL, like the Excel file, for instance. So this is, and in Java you can implement a URL handler for register that for the convert protocol, and whenever you create a new URL or want to write to such a URL, that converter, that handler will be called, and that will be responsible to manage the conversion. And here is an example for comma-separated values. For instance, here we have two, so you see it's convert, and then you have slash, and then you have another slash processor equals wrap, and then you have the actual comma-separated value file. And this, basically, the processor equals wrap will wrap the text in an XML tag, and this will apply the CVS text to data style sheet, which is developed by Andrew. He developed this on the XSL list. So we didn't do any magic conversion scripts or anything. So this is an existing script that will convert from comma-separated values to an XML format. So basically we, and I adapted that to convert to a data topic, basically, right? So here you have two processing steps, one that wraps the text in an XML tag, and another that applies an XSLT style sheet. So you have processor equals XSLT, and then you specify which style sheet, XSLT style sheet, should be applied. And we wanted also to, because you have a URL, URLs can be also readable, so you can write to a URL. In Oxygen, local files are accessed also as URLs through the file protocol. And when we save, we write to the file URL. In the same way, we write to an HTTP WebDAV URL and so on, right? So in this case, if you implement also the reverse conversion pipeline, you can write to the target file. So for schema, for comma-separated values, for instance, we can specify a style sheet that will convert the data topic to comma-separated values back. So then you can have round-tripping, editing a comma-separated values as a data topic. And for that, we have this R processor equals, that specifies the reverse conversion, right? Which applies this data to C comma-separated values.xsl style sheet. And how do you get, from the convert blah, 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 to the simplified form? Again, the XML catalogs. Because in the catalog, you say everything that starts with Excel to data. So rewrite URI. If it starts with Excel to data, it's rewritten like convert and all the processing, all the specification that specifies what steps should be applied, right? So the catalog allows you to use this simplified form. So from the developer perspective, it's just setting up the catalogs, setting the scripts like XSLT or Java or JavaScript or XQuery. You can use different type of scripts, different processing steps. And the user perspective is just using the protocol name in front of the URL pointing to the target resource. So we implemented Excel to XML, JSON to XML, HTML to XHTML processors, XSLT and XQuery. As you've seen, you can invoke an XSLT and specify the style sheet, or the XQuery script, JavaScript, Java processor, and the wrap processor to be able to process with XSLT or XQuery text content. And we have a number of examples of different conversions. I will not stay too much on this. I will just come back to Oxygen to show you. So in this case, the Excel to data is read-only. Yes?
You said Markdown.
Yes.
And you talked about food. So I'm going to ask which flavor of Markdown?
Well, as I said, we didn't invent magic conversions. We just took because we support JavaScript, we took the mark. I don't remember there is a JavaScript engine, yeah, that exists, and we just took that, and plug it here. But you can plug as part of that URL whatever conversion step you want, and so you can support a specific flavor, whatever you want to put in the catalog, basically as the conversion steps. I just wanted to show you this part with the. So here you have a nice graphic, but actually it's an Excel file that provides this information. So it's a dynamic SVG converted from an Excel file. So if we change the let's open this. So if we change the values from this file, right? So let's go back to the author mode. So you see the first bar is very low. So if we put here like 150, save, refresh here, you get a higher bar, right? Because the data is actually in the Excel file. It's not an actual SVG. Yes.
Yeah. Can you click on the first Excel imported something?
I'm sorry?
The first one. And the text view? Yeah. Why here you have the content and on the other one you just have the link? What's the difference?
Well, that was, it's not that you have the link. It's that you have an image in a topic, which is an SVG. If you open this, so basically you should be able to get the SVG source. Let me just show you the comma separated values, because for this we have the both the forward pipeline and the reverse pipeline. So right now if we open the comma separated values file, here. So here we have the actual comma separated values file, and here we have the data topic. So I can go here and say, for instance, George, save. It gives me George here, right? And here if we say Mohammed, save, it gets that value in the comma separated values file, right? So you can edit basically in either of these, and it doesn't matter, because when you save, you get the reverse conversion pipeline triggered, and it will save the comma separated values file, right? And then you have yes.
The round trip could work for all formats.
It depends on you set up the conversion pipelines, right? So if you can make the round tripping, then it will work. But you set up the conversion from one format to the other and the reverse conversion. It depends on what you put there, right?
As long as it is inside the pipeline, then it will work.
Yeah. So we just have this. We just showed the idea that custom URLs will be able to include whatever processing you want, but then you decide what style sheet you want to apply, or what Java code, or what JavaScript code, and so on. Claudius, you ready? Claudius also took this idea for some of his own work. You know, I don't know exactly what he will show us, but he exploited, basically tried to make use of these ideas. Yes.
You want to use this outside option? Because you obviously need some data.
Yeah, you need to have. Well, right now it was very easy for us to implement this within Oxygen itself, but we are thinking to make this convert protocol available, you know, also outside. But for instance, if we need Saxon, we already have it in Oxygen. Otherwise, you need to do more work to set up things and.
Suppose you write a set of data files and you pass it on an open toolkit that you just downloaded. Will it work? Well,
no, because that you need to have the convert protocol support.
Yeah, so you can
right.
add it as an extension.
Yeah, basically, setting up a protocol in Java is just setting a property, a system property pointing to the class that installs the protocol.
You could do it, and if you have a license for Oxygen, are you allowed to do it?
It's not decoupled currently, but we are thinking to try to make that available also outside. But you can take this idea, you know, you implement something similar for your own protocol, or the idea is, you know, that it will just work. And so another part is that we made support also for working with being able to specify relative resources. So you don't need to have necessarily URN files and then, you know, the URN part. We will interpret a relative reference on the target as being relative to the file that contains the reference to that. So if you have a data map and in topics you have, you know, data topics, and you have also an Excel file, you can refer to that as topics/x.xl on one side. And the other part that we implemented for 18 is caching support. So you can add in the pipeline also processor equals cache, and then that will cache the conversion, the dynamic conversion. So otherwise, you know, maybe you have 1,000 references to a file. You do not want to pay the cost of 1,000 conversions.
Could
right?
you use the caching also to convert one source document to many other documents? For instance, you have a large Word document and you want to convert it to a data map structure with several topics.
My colleague Radu implemented also conversion from Javadoc to a data map with topics. So, you know, you get an index, a Javadoc index, and you get a data map back. And for each link from the index to a class, or you get a topic in data.
I have this one large .x file from Daftra, and I convert it now in a factory to data files, but it would be nice to do it dynamically.
Yeah, so if you have the scripts that do that conversion, you can plug them as a URL if you want. Yeah. So it's just yes, Patrick.
Did you integrate this already in Data Open Toolkit?
I'm sorry.
Did you integrate this in Data Open Toolkit?
Well, Oxygen extends a little. So the Data Open Toolkit does not work with URLs right now, but Jarno is working to make the Data Open Toolkit work with URLs rather than local files. But Radu, my colleague Radu, worked actually. A lot of credit is for Radu for the actual implementation for this. I just came with the ideas and the requests. So he also implemented support in Oxygen to be able to transform any file from any URL. So you can have in Oxygen, but it's kind of, it's not that easy. We download, we rewrite content, so we do a lot of processing. So from Oxygen, this works. In the future, it should work also from Data Open Toolkit, because that will support also URLs. Claudius, can you take over? And thank you.
So what we have here, there is an dictionary entry which is rendered in author view, and I want to see the validation errors on one side, and on the other side I want to see this entry as it will look like in the printed dictionary. So for this I use the custom protocols. So the validation, I triggered it by that button, and here I have an report of the validation. On top there is the structural validation and semantic validation. Hopefully this document is valid, so no errors to be displayed here. And you see here I also use the protocol validate and the name of the file for the users to handle easy. And now I want to render as it looks like in the printed. Of course, I use a XQuery script to convert it to the HTML format, and this is not fully completed, but I just want to display the principle, how to use custom protocols for this. I only use Java code for this, so it's somehow secret for common users, but it shows the power of the custom protocols. And so this is for application for the custom protocols, and because there is no demo jam, I have to offer you a gift, what I wanted to present to the demo jam. You know, we have two main views in Oxygen. One is text view, and the other is author view. And I think with this, we can have web view in Oxygen. This is their site. It's live.
In Oxygen?
Yeah, it's in Oxygen. So your boss think you are working. You're just checking your email, or look on YouTube, and so on. In Oxygen. Yeah. So, yeah, support, mailing lists, and so on. Yeah, this is what I wanted. It's a full site. We have all the power of the web here. I accepted the cookies. Yeah. Sorry? Video tutorial. Yeah, you can look at the tutorials. My hard drive crashed on Tuesday, 2 days ago. Otherwise, I would have Georgia speaking at the conference for 1 minute to display, but yeah, that's it. So
don't tell us anything about how you did that.
Yes, for YouTube, this is YouTube. Yes, but I used JavaFX. Yeah, so yeah, but it is a prototype. The browser I made is not fully aware of, so the videos are not on YouTube are not displayed completely, but they can be displayed. I saw a fully fledged browser and it's working, and this maybe can be in Oxygen. Yeah.
And this may be interesting for when you develop, let's say, a website or maybe for Saxon CE.
Yeah, and also for instance, you have notifications in Oxygen. I have 9 messages. I had yesterday 9 messages, and you just click on one, and instead of opening a new browser, it's opening the page in a new tab. Or I don't know, look for something else. Yeah. So yeah, this is. Yeah.
Thank you.